A kingdom can survive a foreign invasion. It can survive famine. It can survive plague. But when a nation turns its sword against itself, the damage can echo for generations. In the year 1135, England faced a crisis unlike anything it had seen before. A king was dead. An empire stood leaderless. And two rival rulers stepped forward, each claiming the same crown. One was a powerful nobleman willing to seize power by force. The other was the king's own daughter, determined to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Their struggle would plunge England into nearly 2 decades of chaos. Castles would burn, cities would be looted, families would choose sides, and ordinary people would find themselves trapped between two ambitious monarchs fighting for one kingdom. This was not merely a battle for a crown. It was a war that nearly destroyed England itself. And it began with a shipwreck. Long before England became one of the world's most powerful kingdoms, it stood on the edge of collapse. The early 12th century was a time of growing prosperity. Stone castles rose above the countryside. Market towns expanded. Trade flourished across the English Channel. At the center of this stability stood King Henry, a ruler known for his intelligence, discipline, and ruthless efficiency. For more than 3 decades, Henry had maintained order across England and vast territories in Normandy. His authority was unquestioned. His dynasty appeared secure. Then fate intervened. On a cold November night in 1120, disaster struck in the waters off Normandy. A tragedy that would change the future of England forever. The celebration had lasted for hours. Nobles laughed. Wine flowed freely. Musicians played late into the evening. The White Ship was considered one of the finest vessels in the kingdom. A fast and luxurious ship carrying England's brightest young nobles. Most importantly, it carried Henry's only legitimate son and heir, William Adelin, the future king. As darkness covered the English Channel, the ship departed the Norman coast. The crew was confident. The passengers were drunk and cheerful. Nobody sensait danger. Then came a terrible impact. The White Ship struck a submerged rock. Wood splintered. Water rushed in. Panic erupted. Screams filled the night. Within minutes, one of Europe's most prestigious vessels disappeared beneath the freezing sea. Nearly everyone aboard drowned, including William, the king's only legitimate son. When news reached Henry I, witnesses claimed he was devastated beyond words. Some chroniclers even wrote that he never truly smiled again. The loss was personal, but it was also political, because without a male heir, England's future suddenly became uncertain. And uncertainty was often the first step toward war. Henry knew the danger. Without a clear successor, powerful nobles would compete for power the moment he died. Determined to prevent chaos, he made a controversial decision. He named his daughter Matilda as heir to the throne. This was extraordinary. No woman had ever ruled England in her own right. Many nobles were uncomfortable with the idea. Medieval society was dominated by men. Kings led armies. Kings commanded loyalty. Kings ruled kingdoms. The thought of a queen exercising full royal authority challenged deeply rooted traditions. Yet Henry forced his barons to swear an oath. Again and again, they promised to support Matilda's claim after his death. Publicly, they agreed. Privately, many had doubts. Matilda herself was no ordinary princess. She had been married to the Holy Roman Emperor and carried herself with the confidence of royalty. Intelligent, determined, strong-willed. But those qualities sometimes made her appear arrogant to those around her. Meanwhile, another figure watched events carefully. A man with royal blood. A man with ambition. A man named Stephen. And when the king finally died, Stephen moved faster than anyone else. December 1135. King Henry I was dead. Almost immediately, the promises made to Matilda began to crumble. The kingdom's most powerful nobles hesitated. Some feared a female ruler. Others worried about Matilda's husband and his growing influence. Many simply wanted stability. Stephen saw his opportunity. Crossing the English Channel with remarkable speed, he rushed toward London. There, he secured support from influential church leaders and powerful nobles. The treasury opened. The crown became available. And before Matilda could react, Stephen was crowned King of England. The gamble worked. England now had a king, but also had another rightful claimant, Matilda, and she had no intention of surrendering. The stage was set for one of the most destructive civil wars in English history. A conflict later remembered by chroniclers as simply the Anarchy. At first, open warfare seemed avoidable. Negotiations occurred. Alliances shifted. Both sides tested their strength. Then the violence began. Castles became centers of military power. Local lords exploited the confusion. Private armies roamed the countryside. Villages were raided. Trade routes became dangerous. Ordinary people paid the highest price. One medieval chronicler described the suffering in chilling terms. He wrote that Christ and his saints seemed asleep. The words reflected widespread despair. Across England, people struggled to know whom to trust. One town might support Stephen. The next might support Matilda. Neighbor fought neighbor. Families divided. The kingdom fractured. And the worst was still ahead. By 1141, the war reached a turning point. Before we continue, have you ever wondered how this channel's recreate lost civilizations and historical worlds using AI? If you'd like to learn the tools and workflow behind this style of content creation, I've linked a beginner-friendly resource in the description below. Now, let's continue our journey through history. Near the town of Lincoln, rival forces prepared for battle. Stephen personally led his army. Matilda's supporters advanced to meet him. Winter winds swept across the battlefield. Armored knights assembled. Banners snapped in the cold air. The fighting was brutal. Steel crashed against steel. Horses thundered through mud. Men struggled for survival amid the chaos. Stephen fought fiercely. Witnesses later praised his courage. But bravery could not change the outcome. His army collapsed. The king was captured. For the first time, Matilda appeared victorious. After years of conflict, the crown seemed within reach. England finally appeared ready to accept its first ruling queen. But history had one more twist prepared. The road to power lay open before Matilda. King Stephen sat in captivity. His supporters were scattered. Many nobles believed the war was effectively over. After years of struggle, England's first female ruler seemed destined to claim the throne. But winning a kingdom and keeping a kingdom were not the same thing. As Matilda advanced toward London, expectations filled the air. The city was the heart of England's wealth and political influence. Whoever controlled London controlled the kingdom. Crowds gathered in anticipation. Church bells rang. Nobles arrived to pledge their loyalty. Yet beneath the surface, tensions were growing. Matilda possessed intelligence, determination, and courage. But she also carried the pride of someone who had spent her life among emperors and kings. Many chroniclers described her as proud and uncompromising. Whether fair or not, that reputation would soon become a serious problem. As preparations for her coronation moved forward, Matilda demanded heavy financial support from London. Taxes, payments, contributions. The city's merchants were furious. They expected rewards for their loyalty. Instead, they felt pressured and ignored. Anger spread rapidly through the streets. Whispers became protests. Protests became threats. Then, suddenly the atmosphere changed. The same city that had welcomed Matilda now turned against her. Crowds filled the roads. Church leaders grew nervous. Supporters began slipping away. Before she could be crowned, Matilda was forced to flee London. The moment that could have changed English history vanished. Just like that, the woman who came closest to becoming England's first ruling queen left the city without a crown. And far away, Stephen's allies were preparing their revenge. While Stephen remained imprisoned, one person refused to surrender. His wife, Matilda of Boulogne. History often remembers kings, sometimes queens. Rarely does it remember the women who kept kingdoms alive during moments of crisis. But Stephen's wife was no ordinary queen. She was intelligent, politically skilled, and fiercely loyal. While her husband sat in captivity, she began rebuilding his cause from the ground up. Messengers raced across England. Allies were contacted. Mercenaries were hired. Castles reopened their gates. One by one, powerful nobles returned to Stephen's side. The war was not over. In many ways, it was only entering its most dangerous phase. The decisive moment came later that year, near Winchester, a city filled with religious importance and political influence. Matilda's forces found themselves trapped. Enemy troops closed in from multiple directions. Escape routes disappeared. The situation became desperate as arrows darkened the sky and soldiers fought through narrow streets. Panic spread among Matilda's ranks. The woman who had nearly become queen now faced disaster. Her army collapsed. Many of her most important allies were captured. Among them was her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, the military genius behind much of her success. A prisoner exchange soon followed. Robert was released. Stephen regained his freedom, and suddenly the war returned to where it had started. Two rivals, one kingdom, no clear winner. As the years passed, England entered one of the darkest periods in its medieval history. Neither side possessed enough strength to destroy the other. Neither side could fully control the kingdom. The result was a grinding stalemate. Across the countryside, new castles appeared. Not royal castles, private fortresses built by ambitious lords. Many were constructed without permission. Some were little more than wooden strongholds. Others became formidable military bases. From these castles, local warlords expanded their power. Taxes increased. Raids became common. Travel grew dangerous. Entire communities lived under constant fear. A merchant carrying goods from one town to another risked robbery. Farmers worried about soldiers taking their harvest. Villagers feared being caught between rival armies. The landscape itself reflected the kingdom's suffering. Burned farms, abandoned roads, ruined churches, fields left uncultivated. The war affected everyone, rich and poor alike. One medieval chronicler painted a haunting picture of the era. He described torture, starvation, lawlessness, and widespread despair. Whether every detail was true remains debated. But one thing is certain. For ordinary people, these years felt like the collapse of civilization itself. England had become a kingdom trapped between two crowns. While Stephen and Matilda continued their struggle, a new figure quietly emerged. A young man who would eventually change everything. His name was Henry Plantagenet. Matilda is son, born into uncertainty, raised during civil war. Watching his mother's lifelong battle unfold, Henry inherited more than ambition. He inherited intelligence, energy, and an extraordinary determination to succeed where others had failed. As he grew older, he began attracting supporters. Some admired his leadership. Others simply wanted an end to the endless conflict. England was exhausted. Nearly 2 decades of instability had drained the kingdom. People wanted peace. They wanted order. Most importantly, they wanted a future. Henry understood this. Unlike many nobles who focused on local rivalries, He thought in terms of kingdoms, empires, generations, and he was preparing for something much larger. By the early 1150s, the balance of power was shifting. Stephen was aging. Years of war had taken their toll. His authority remained significant, but it was no longer absolute. Meanwhile, Henry Plantagenet was becoming increasingly powerful. He controlled vast territories in France. He commanded growing military resources. His reputation expanded across Europe. The kingdom now faced a new reality. The original rivals were fading. A younger generation was taking center stage. In 1153, Henry crossed into England. His arrival electrified the political landscape. Nobles who had spent years changing sides began reconsidering their loyalties. Many saw Henry as the future. The conflict moved toward another confrontation, one that could finally decide England's fate. Armies assembled, castles prepared for siege. The possibility of another bloody civil war loomed over the kingdom. Then something unexpected happened. After nearly 20 years of fighting, many people simply had enough. Not just peasants, not just merchants, even powerful nobles. The appetite for endless war was disappearing. For the first time in decades, compromise seemed possible, and that compromise would change English history forever. By the summer of 1153, England stood at a crossroads. For nearly 2 decades, the kingdom had endured uncertainty, destruction, and civil war. Children had grown into adults knowing nothing but conflict. Entire regions had suffered under shifting loyalties and endless military campaigns. The struggle that began with the death of Henry I had consumed a generation. Yet neither side had truly won. Stephen remained king. Henry Plantagenet remained determined. And England remained exhausted. The possibility of one final catastrophic war hung over the kingdom. Armies maneuvered across the countryside. Castles prepared for siege. Messengers carried urgent orders between rival camps. Many expected another great battle. Instead, something remarkable happened. The political landscape shifted almost overnight. Earlier that year, Stephen had suffered a devastating personal loss. His son and heir, Eustace, died unexpectedly. The death changed everything. For years, Stephen had fought to secure the throne for his son. Now that future had vanished. The old king faced a painful reality. Continuing the war might destroy the kingdom without securing his dynasty. Meanwhile, Henry's position had never been stronger. His territories in France were vast. His military reputation was growing. His supporters were increasing. Most importantly, many influential nobles believed Henry represented stability. The future seemed to belong to him. Negotiations began. Slowly, carefully, suspiciously. Years of bloodshed had created deep mistrust. Yet both sides understood that compromise offered something war no longer could: peace. In November 1153, an agreement was reached, known today as the Treaty of Wallingford. Its terms were simple but revolutionary. Stephen would remain king for the rest of his life. Henry would become his legal heir. The war would end. The kingdom would reunite. After nearly 20 years of chaos, England finally saw a path forward. No grand battlefield victory. No final heroic charge. No decisive military conquest. The conflict ended because everyone was tired of fighting. And sometimes that is how history changes. Peace did not instantly heal England. The scars of war remained everywhere. Ruined villages dotted the countryside. Unauthorized castles still stood on hills and river crossings. Trust between rival factions remained fragile. But for the first time in a generation, there was hope. Stephen spent his final months attempting to restore stability. The energetic warrior who had seized the throne in 1135 was now an aging king carrying the weight of nearly 2 decades of conflict. His reign would always be controversial. Some viewed him as a usurper. Others saw him as a capable ruler trapped by impossible circumstances. But even his critics recognized one truth. He had never stopped fighting for what he believed was his rightful crown. In October 1154, Stephen died, quietly, without the violence that had defined much of his reign. The news spread quickly across England. Church bells rang. Messengers rode through towns and villages. And throughout the kingdom, people waited to see what would happen next. For nearly 20 years, the question had been who would rule England. Now, at last, there was an answer. Henry Plantagenet, the son of Matilda, the heir of Henry I, the man who would become one of the most powerful monarchs in medieval history. When Henry II took the throne in 1154, he inherited a kingdom that desperately needed rebuilding. He was only 21 years old, young, energetic, ambitious, and unlike many rulers of the era, incredibly intelligent. Almost immediately, he moved to restore royal authority. Unauthorized castles were demolished. Law and order returned to regions that had spent years under local warlords. Royal courts expanded their influence. The crown once again became the strongest force in England. The contrast with the years of civil war was dramatic. Merchants could travel more safely. Trade recovered. Agriculture expanded. Cities began growing once more. The kingdom slowly emerged from the shadow of the anarchy. Yet Henry's ambitions extended far beyond England. Through inheritance, marriage, and political skill, he controlled territories stretching across vast portions of Western Europe. His empire became larger than anything his grandfather had ruled. The dynasty born from civil war was now becoming one of the most powerful in medieval history. The Plantagenets had arrived, and they would shape England for centuries. History often remembers battles, victories, coronations, but the true legacy of the anarchy lies elsewhere. The war revealed how fragile kingdoms could be. One unexpected death, one disputed succession, and an entire nation could descend into chaos. The conflict also transformed attitudes toward royal authority. Future English kings worked tirelessly to ensure succession was clearer and more secure. The memory of civil war lingered for generations. People remembered burned farms, broken families, shifting loyalties, the uncertainty of living in a kingdom without a clear ruler. Yet the war also produced unexpected consequences. Without the struggle between Stephen and Matilda, Henry II might never have risen to power. Without Henry II, the Plantagenet dynasty might never have existed. And without the Plantagenets, the history of England would look completely different. The conflict that nearly destroyed the kingdom ultimately helped create a stronger one. History is often filled with such contradictions. Moments of collapse that become foundations for renewal. Periods of darkness that shape the future. And few examples demonstrate this better than the war between two rivals fighting for one crown. As the years passed, the wounds of civil war slowly faded. Fields were replanted, markets reopened, castles changed hands peacefully instead of through siege and bloodshed. Life moved forward, but the memory remained. The memory of a kingdom divided. The memory of two determined rulers convinced they were destined to wear the same crown. One was Stephen, the king who seized an opportunity and spent his life defending it. The other was Matilda, the woman who came closer than anyone before her to ruling England in her own right. Neither achieved everything they wanted, yet together they changed England forever. Their struggle reshaped the monarchy, altered the future of the kingdom, and paved the way for one of history's greatest dynasties. Today, the castles still stand. The chronicles still survive. And the echoes of that distant conflict can still be heard in the story of England itself. Because history is not only the story of victories. Sometimes it is the story of survival. And sometimes the battles that matter most are fought not against foreign enemies, but against fellow countrymen. If you enjoyed this journey into one of medieval England's most dramatic chapters, consider subscribing for more videos like this and let us know in the comments. Which historical conflict, lost city, empire, or forgotten world should we explore next? Because history never truly disappears. It only waits to be rediscovered.